Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Raisina 2022 Fireside Chats. This evening, I have the great pleasure of a conversation with Ambassador Richard Verma, who, for the minuscule people who do not know him, is a former US ambassador to India and is now with Mastercard, having moved on from his previous avatar in the Asia Foundation. And so, talking to me this evening, Richard, I wanted to ask you about something that you have spent a lot of your time on, which is the U.S.-India relationship. We've seen the downs, but we've also seen the ups. And at least in the last few years, the trajectory has been quite interesting. However, we see storm clouds, or at least they perceived to be storm clouds, particularly on the Russia-Ukraine front. And the West, particularly the US, sort of haranguing India on its Russia relationship once again. Is it a repetition? And I say this because it seems to people from here that, oh, we're at this again. A few years ago, we were being told about Iran, our relationship with Iran. Today, we are being told about our relationship with Russia. So this is a ghost of a legacy that we were hoping to put behind us. Do you think we will ever succeed in putting this ghost behind us? Or do you think we carry it on our shoulders, much like that mythical creature?
It's a great question. Yes, no, it's a great question. I appreciate being here with you, and I'm sorry I can't be there in person with all of you. This is one of the most important dialogues that take place in India, and I'm really glad to play a small part here. You know, Indrani, you will remember when Prime Minister Modi came to Washington a few years ago and declared before a joint session of Congress that we have, quote unquote, overcome the hesitations of history in our relationship. And it was such a powerful quote and such an important use of words, because if there is one relationship where history matters and where history holds us back, it is this relationship. And so I think your kind of question about, are we bound to repeat some of the mistakes of the past or some of the tensions of the past, I think is really important. But here's what I would tell you. I think we often get that history very wrong. I actually don't think we get the history right. And maybe I'll just, if you don't mind, just remind the audience about the history, and I'll do it very briefly. But as I look over 75 years of bilateral partnership with the United States, you know, the assessment or the assumption is that, boy, it was really negative until about the early 2000s. And in fact, that is not the case at all. In fact, I would say the first period of time from 47 to 64 was actually a time of great promise. I would say the second Eisenhower period and the Kennedy administration, there may have been no stronger period between the US and India. In fact, when India was at war with China, what country came to India's defense, sending intelligence overflight, thousands of tons of ammunition, deploying the Seventh Fleet? That was President Kennedy. Now, how quickly things changed just a few years later when Richard Nixon deploys that same Seventh Fleet up the coast of India, and we go into a period of estrangement and kind of divergence from about 1965 to 1998. No question about it, a rough period. But then we've had, as you said, a dramatically upward period from 1999 forward. Civil nuclear deal, major defense partner, joint strategic vision for the Asia Pacific. I could go on and on. Paris Climate Agreement, so much that we got done. If you actually total up the number of years, we've had, I'm doing this kind of randomly, but we've had about 40 years of real convergence between us and about 33 years of what I'd call estrangement or a period of no progress. So let's remember, that is one of the first lessons I think we have to remind ourselves, is that our history was actually pretty good. And so the instances that you mentioned, whether they're Iran or the current day, and I do think we have to talk about the current day, because I agree there are some storm clouds, because that leads me to a second lesson, which is that during that 33-year period of estrangement, there was one country that divided us, and that country was Russia. And I am afraid that we could end up making the same mistakes again and have that country divide us yet again. Now, I am encouraged by the incredible progress I saw here in Washington just last week with the 2+2. And, you know, as I go back in history and I think about the approach of Richard Nixon, which was you're either with us or you're with them, no administration in the United States for the last 22 or 23 years has taken that approach. And including this one, I think people understand the relationship with Russia that India has. They understand the military connections. They understand the geography that India is in. But look, we're also a country that wants to shape kind of this century. And we thought, and I think we still believe, that India is aligned in that. And I will just say specifically some of our commitments on a peaceful resolution of dispute, the kind of lawfulness of how we resolve disputes, the use of force, not targeting civilians. India and the United States have actually committed to those principles, and we didn't necessarily think they have geographical limitations only applicable in Asia. So we have to work through these current tensions, and I think I am concerned the longer that the Ukraine conflict goes on, I think that the more our two countries are going to have to be talking about that so we don't repeat some of the mistakes of history.
Thank you, Ambassador Verma. My question leads from what you just said, and we talked about the hesitations of history. In a sense, and I say this from the years that I have spent covering this relationship, in a sense, I think India has overcome the hesitations of history to the extent that we have an old relationship, and we'll talk about we're in the current context. So yes, we do have an old relationship with Russia, but some of the confusion in India stems from the fact that from Indians questioning, doesn't America see the depth of our relations with America? So why do they get upset about our relations with Russia? So in a sense, is it America still tethered to its own hesitations of history? And that's something that I would like you to address.
I really like the way you framed it, because you put it back on us, which is what a good journalist and reporter would do. I think the way I think about it is that it is a concern, I think, from the U.S. perspective about the implications of the Russian action. So if a big, powerful country can walk into another country and by force and by targeting civilians take territory, that is a very dangerous situation. And I don't think anyone in the United States or in European capitals or elsewhere is asking India necessarily to discount its historical partnership. I remember in 2003 when the United States went into Iraq and was subject, I would say rightfully, to a lot of international criticism, including from New Delhi. We accepted that criticism, but we were able to build and weave together a very strong partnership. So I think the kind of question or curiosity from the West and concern is, boy, you can have a historical partnership with this country, but are you not seeing what the rest of the world is also seeing, and the danger it presents to the international system going forward, to democracies? And that's, I think, quite quite a concerning development from our perspective. So are we still dogged by history? Perhaps. I actually think this is more about the future and what kind of world and what kind of system we want to have. Are international institutions stronger because of this action? Are civilians stronger? Is the law of war stronger? I think a lot has been called into question about what has happened over the last 2 months. It's really shaken the international system.
I would agree, actually, in the sense that it has shaken the international system. If we thought the last 2 years of a pandemic changed the world, the last 2 months has changed the world in ways which I don't think we fully comprehend yet. To go back to the US-India relationship, and again, the question from New Delhi is, why we have this relationship with Russia. While if America says, can you not see what the rest of the world is seeing? India can say, can you not see what I see on my borders with China every day? And if I have defense systems and weapon systems, which may be a legacy from Russia, am I going to be the one to kick this relationship in the teeth, despite the gross provocation or the fact that we are so that what Russia has done is actually so against the principles of all international law. But if this is a question that is put to America from India, why do you not see what we see on our borders? What would be your answer?
Yeah, no, look, and I have been to those borders. I understand the challenge. As you know, I have been to every state in India, and I understand the challenge very deeply, and I fully appreciate it. And look, from 1965 to 2005, not a single U.S. platform or piece of military hardware was even made available to the Indian side. So I trust me, I fully understand it, and countries pursue their self-interest and their strategic interests. So I don't think anyone's asking for a change in that calculus. But look, can we get through this together? Of course we can. And let me maybe just try to put a more positive frame on it, which is, why have we increased over the last 2 decades, 2.5 decades? And why is this relationship different? And I do think this is not about buying and selling stuff. This is not about trade. This is not about dialogues or speeches. This really is about the values that we share together. And that actually makes us unique partners. I don't think you have that with Russia. We don't have that with many other countries. And so we have a shared colonial experience. We do have kind of years and years and decades of talking and working and committed to social justice and equity. We talk about our building of constitutional democracies, which are still very much in progress in both countries. Us after, many years, but it is still a work in progress. And then we talk about our shared commitment to building this post kind of war order, especially in Asia. And I think those ideas and values are the glue that actually hold us together. So we're going to get through this episode as long as we hold on to those values. Now, I will tell you, just back to history, the times in our relationship where we have been at our worst, let's pick 1970, 71, 72. Richard Nixon, and you can go back to the tapes, he didn't care a lick whether India was a democracy or not. Yeah. And I don't think it's a coincidence that our relationship hit rock bottom. I think we have to value those key principles, again, that actually bind us together, that attract all these hundreds of thousands of Indian students here each year, that attract 4 million Americans of Indian descent to the United States. We can't lose that. That is what will actually help guide us through the decades ahead, which will be difficult. We're going to face future pandemics, future transnational threats, future Russia-Ukraine situations. And I think back to what Indian prime ministers have said for 25 years. We are natural allies. Yeah. But I also think back to what Prime Minister Modi said to President Obama multiple times, which is, it's not good enough what we do for each other. It is not good enough. What's really going to be impactful is what we do for the global community and how we demonstrate that. And that is what is being tested today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ambassador Verma. I would ideally like you to retell that absolutely stunning story of yours, but I won't, because it'll take up a lot of time. I only want to just touch on it. This was when your dad said that Manmohan Singh came from the same village that he did, and when you spoke to Manmohan Singh, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, the first thing he said to you was, "Oh, your dad and I come from the same village." So
exactly
we
right.
are in the same village together, because, as you said, there's not only values, but it's all these people that move from here to there and has made America what it is. And that is actually the basis of the relationship, much more than what we put on our borders. So thank you very much, Ambassador Verma. That was a great conversation.
That's exactly right. Indrani, thank you so much. And you called out my dad. I have to mention today is his 90th birthday. So happy birthday to my dad.
Please wish him from me.
Thank you. And it is the sacrifices that he made, my mother made, and millions of other people who allow us to be here today and to talk about all the progress and all the issues in front of us. I really, really am optimistic about the days, weeks, and months ahead. I really am.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Verma. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.